The issue in the Tex McIver trial is slowly becoming the defendant's inconsistencies. We just heard him say that he wasn't a gun guy, but we watched prosecutors bring 44 guns that he owned into the courtroom, of course with trigger locks, and plop them down right in front of members of the jury. That had to have had an impact. Caroline Polisi, one of the other inconsistencies here were the inconsistencies with what happened when the shooting happened.
Right.
And there's a lot of doubt about whether or not the victim had a separate will.
Right.
Okay, did she make a new will or did she not? And the state hasn't come right out and insinuated, well, I shouldn't say they haven't come right out directly and accused him of tearing up a will, but they're trying to insinuate that maybe she did and maybe that's proof that something happened to it. There's been a lot of testimony about that.
Yeah, I have to tell you, this is not looking good for the prosecution. You know, they came out sort of strong. I thought initially after hearing opening statements that, wow, this was going to be a very clear case for a motive, an economic motive. I have not been able to make heads or tails of what kind of case the prosecution has put forth at this point. With the codicils to the will, with all these, I mean, I'm not trusting a state's lawyer, but...
Yeah, the amendment to the will.
Yeah, exactly.
And, did a new will exist?
Yes, it's way too confusing. And you know if they had a stronger motive or a clearer sense of where this was going, that they would present it that way. All they have right now is confusion.
I want to listen to some clips from earlier in the case. We'll try to make some sense of where the state might be going. This is the victim's bookkeeper and friend testifying about whether or not she had a new will.
But it sounds like it was, in fact, not a month.
No.
It was, I believe you told the jury, 4 years?
It was close to it, yes.
Okay. And during those 4 years, what were some of your main job responsibilities and duties?
Well, I was the reception. I answered the phone. I greeted the guests. I bought the office supplies. I helped quite a bit in accounting, processing contracts, reorganizing the filing system. I could go on and on.
Right. So it sounds like you did it all.
I was, very energetic and wanted to do the best I could.
Okay. And did you work closely with Miss Diane through those years?
I saw her every day.
Okay. And during those years, did you at one point have a conversation or about her will?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell the jury about the time period or the years that you believe that occurred?
I would say it was somewhere latter part of 14, early 15.
Okay. So
it wasn't a significant event, so I didn't make a note of it.
Okay, so it was 2014, the latter part of 2014 or into 2015?
How about that time?
Okay. And how did that conversation, or could you tell the jury how that conversation came about?
Just for the record, I renew my objection.
Okay, that's noted and preserved.
May we proceed, Judge?
You may.
You can answer the question. Let me ask it again.
Yes, please.
I know I talk fast sometimes. Tell the jury how that conversation about her will came about.
She called me in her office and said, I need you to make some copies of these papers. She said, I cannot trust anyone else. So I proceeded to the copy room and I made the copies and I went back and handed them to her and she says, thank you so much. This is my new will.
Now, about what time of the day do you think that she asked you to make those copies was?
It was probably around lunchtime because there were a lot of people out of the office at that time,
Okay.
on lunch break.
A lot of people were on break.
Right.
When she approached you, or tell us, did she approach you or did you go into her office when she first asked you to make the copies?
I think she just stuck her head out the door and said, I need you to make some copies for me.
Okay. And after she did that, did you go into her office and retrieve
Yes.
The pages?
Yes.
Okay. And when you were making the copies, or before you made the copies, did you look through the document that you were copying?
Absolutely not.
Now, and tell the jury why you didn't look through it.
Well, when Diane said she could only trust me, there was no way I was going to betray her trust. So I would not dare look at anything that she did not want me to be a privilege of.
And on that note, let's get some water. On that note, Is there any other reason why you didn't look at the documents you were copying?
Well, I had previously copied some copies for her, and they were in reference to the possible sale of the billboard company.
And if she would have, I guess, walked into the copy room and you were looking at the documents, tell the jury what would have happened.
Well, she would have probably exploded.
Okay. Did you know her to have a sharp tongue?
Quite a bit.
Okay. Tell the jury a little bit about Ms. McIver's sharp tongue.
Well, there were several times that, she would get on me, but I knew that was just Diane's personality. And one minute she could be chewing me out, and the next minute she's hugging my neck and telling me how much she loves me.
Okay. So once she got it out, it was done. Okay. And so after you remember how many copies of the document that you made?
It was more than 2 and less than 10. I don't remember. I didn't count them.
Okay. And you remember how many pages the document was?
I just said.
Oh. Okay, so let me ask, I'll re-ask.
I don't know the exact number of pages.
Okay, but how many copies of the actual document?
Oh, I made 2.
That testimony was from the victim's bookkeeper and friend. And there you heard her say, look, I was asked to photocopy what the victim described as a new will, but I didn't dare look at it because if I looked at it, she would have blown up in anger. And we've heard that this victim was very successful. She was very pointed. Sometimes she had a sharp tongue. Look, she ruled with authority. And Caroline, look, is this evidence that she had a new will? Because there's a lot of evidence that she didn't have a new will. And the state would at least seem to want to try to convince the jurors that maybe she had a new will. Well, that's not the burden of proof. It has to be beyond a reasonable doubt in order to get a conviction. But, is this just one little piece that might make the jurors say this guy, Tex McIver, might have been up to no good?
Well, it's very emblematic of sort of the entire way the prosecution has gone about this case. It's like they get a witness up on the stand and you think, okay, this is it. This is the smoking gun. And we heard, right in that clip there, oh my gosh, okay, there was a second will. She had this, she wanted her bookkeeper to make copies of it. And then it's like, but she didn't look at the will, so we don't know what it is. We can't even verify it. So it's like you get right there, and you're almost you're almost rooting for the prosecution because you want them to sort of have this aha moment, and they never get it, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah. So ultimately, we don't know for sure if there was another will. Want to continue listening to some testimony about this issue? Was there a new will? Was there not a new will? One other way that the prosecution is trying to sow doubt into this case, ironically, rather than the defense, is to turn around and say, okay, the defendant, Tex McIver, showed up with a couple of other people and carted away some files. Was there a new will? Was the new will in one of the files that was taken away? It seems that the prosecution is trying to make that jump. So let's listen to testimony from the victim's executive assistant about those files leaving the office.
You named several other people who had received loans from Ms. McIver. What size were those loans, if you recall?
2 of them were cars. So the one car was like $15,000, the other car was $18,000, and one was a home loan that was, I think, $60,000. So those were the ranges. There were some other personal loans that were under $10,000.
Were any of those loans, car, home, personal, interest only, like the one you described, made to Mr. McIver?
No, that was the only one.
Can you repeat, please, the names of the people who went through the 2 filing cabinets in the back room of Ms. McIver's office at U.S. Enterprises?
Yes. Angie Brooks, Ken Rickard, and Mr. Corey.
Do you have first-hand knowledge, not someone told you, but first-hand knowledge as to where the contents of those filing cabinets are now?
I know they left the office in a pickup truck. That's the best I know.
You saw that happen?
I helped load the pickup truck.
You helped load the pickup. Was this the one you mentioned where you were putting boxes that were also out in the hallway that were Ms. McIver's
Yes.
belongings from her office?
Yes.
Okay.
They were put in a pickup truck and hauled off.
And the names of the people who were doing the hauling were?
Dixie Martin and Tammy Johnson.
Are you aware of any other investments that Ms. McIver had? You mentioned that you heard about an insurance policy, and there was the money market account. Of other investments that she had.
She participated in the 401k at our company, and she had a personal life insurance policy that she also carried.
Okay.
Best of my knowledge, that's it.
Mr. Abate, any follow-up based on those questions?
Just one, Your Honor.
Okay, so you have an executive assistant saying that a bunch of files were taken out of the victim's office. We have another witness saying there might have been a new will. Caroline, look, this sows some doubt, I guess, and it's weird that the prosecution's doing it, but we also have Diane McIver's attorney saying no new will was constructed, at least not with me, and it would have been very strange for her to go to another attorney to get one because I'm the one that did the other will.
Right, and that's devastating. That's devastating for the prosecution's case. They just don't have enough. They're throwing everything out at the wall. They're calling up witness after witness, and it's not working.
Yeah, let's shift gears now a little bit, because one other thing the prosecution is trying to do is say, hey, wait a minute, Tex McIver keeps changing his story about exactly what happened when the shooting went down. We heard testimony from the friend, Danny Jo Carter, and we heard testimony from nurses like this.
He was very flustered, and he was I shot her.
Okay, so did you hear him say anything?
I heard him say, and this is what I heard, and it was in passing. I was passing through that I was cleaning my gun in the bathroom and I shot her.
I'm sorry.
I was cleaning my gun in the bathroom and I shot her.
And you heard him say that?
Yes, from him, not from anybody else.
Just to be sure, so the hallway is there. When you were passing him, were you close to him?
Yes.
I'm going to walk towards you. Just tell me when to stop.
Sure.
When I'm close. Was he this close?
Much closer.
This close?
Yeah, I was literally here. He got closer.
Like right here?
Yeah.
So you were passing him when you heard him say that he was cleaning his gun?
Yes.
And he shot her?
Yes.
Did he mention where he shot her?
No, I did not. Because it was in passing, it was so quick. That was the only part of the sentence that I heard.
Okay. And make sure I'm writing this down right. I was cleaning
My gun.
Uh-huh.
I shot her.
Can you say where?
I heard bathroom.
Do you remember where in the sentence he said bathroom? If you have to talk in the
I was cleaning my gun in the bathroom.
In the bathroom. When I shot her?
Yes.
Okay. Did you share this information with any other nurses?
Not really, no.
Did you speak to the police afterwards?
Okay, you have that nurse saying that she heard the defendant say, I was cleaning my gun in the bathroom when it went off. Well, the rest of the story is that the gun went off in a car. So, Caroline, again, this is another instance where the defendant said one thing and then said another thing. Yeah. Now, the defense attacked that particular nurse's memory and said, well, the way that she heard this was sort of in passing. She may have only picked up part of the conversation, and she really did get backed into a corner on cross-examination. But the prosecution can still tell jurors, hey, look, she was telling the truth as best she remembered it, and it just doesn't look good.
Right, and she really has no motive to lie. She doesn't have a dog in this fight. So, you know, you give her a little bit of a leeway there. But the fact is, it doesn't change the fact that Tex McIver acted incredibly bizarrely in the immediate aftermath of this alleged tragedy, or was it a murder? So we know within minutes of this happening, when they got to the hospital, he pulled Danny Joe aside and he said, look, why don't you change your story and say that you just came here and met us here? I mean, and it made no sense. We heard from Danny Joe saying that, Tex, I drove us into the hospital.
Yeah, we're going there in a couple of minutes. We're going to review that too.
Right.
So, you know, why would the guy change his story in the moments after the shooting?
So my theory, and this is my own theory, and I haven't heard it proposed yet, but you know, he's a lawyer, okay? I think he may have been overthinking things.
You should have been listening to me because I proposed this theory yesterday.
Okay.
So I
think he overthought.
I'll give you credit.
Okay, I think he knows that it looked bad, and he probably got nervous, and this happened.
Maybe try to take control. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more analysis of the defendant's conflicting statements in just a moment. Welcome back, everybody. You're watching Law and Crime Live, and thanks again for those of you joining us on the Crime and Investigation Network. Court is wrapped for the day in the Tex McIver case, but we're still here breaking down some of the issues, including some of the defendant's inconsistent statements. We just heard from a nurse who said that she thought she heard him say that he was cleaning his gun in the bathroom when it went off, but, well, in other times he said it went off in the back of the car, and that's what the other witness testified. So we're going to listen now to some testimony from Danny Jo Carter. We alluded to this a few minutes ago. She is the witness who was in the car, and she said at the hospital while the defendant's wife was dying on an operating table, the defendant asked her to change her story. Let's listen to that.
Okay, I'll overrule it given that answer.
Now, sorry.
Keep going.
All right. Can you tell the jurors, in 2005, the saloon is built in time for the wedding, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you tell the jurors, when Diane got married in 2005, you all had been friends about how long at that time?
You're making me add 30-something years.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors that you remained friends consistently as close friends for that entire 30-year period before she got married?
No, there was a period of time where I developed a problem with alcohol, and she distanced herself from me. I had an alcoholic father. We both knew people that were alcoholics, and our history was that they made everybody miserable and then they died. So she distanced herself from me, which broke my heart.
And can you give the jurors some idea along this timeline when that would have occurred and how long did it last?
Yes, it was September of 2005, because it was right before the wedding. And 2005, 2006, 7, 8 or 9 years.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, did you eventually kind of reconnect and reestablish your relationship with
Yes.
Diane McIver?
Yes, we did.
And had anything changed about you that allowed that reconnection to occur?
I was sober.
In fact, can you tell the jurors, had Diane McIver cut you off to the extent that you were not allowed to come to her wedding, to the defendant?
Well, when she said she distanced herself from me, we didn't speak after that at all.
Now, can you help the jurors understand a little bit about her personality? How would you characterize it?
Well, she was a lot of fun. She was intense. She played hard, and but she could be difficult. Because she was very pragmatic about appointments, times, things that you did, how you were eating, how you choose.
Danny Jo Carter, the friend of the McIvers, she was in the driver's seat when the gun went off in Tex McIver's hand in the back seat, the bullet traveling through the seat and striking victim Diane McIver. Caroline Polisi is an attorney here in New York City. So let's look at the trajectory of the evidence, so to speak. You had one nurse say that she thought she heard the defendant say, "I was cleaning my gun in the bathroom." Then you've got Danny Jo Carter saying, after she just drove the defendant and the victim to the hospital in the car that they were in, then you've got her saying, well, Tex told me to tell everybody that I just drove here by myself to support the family. Right. Well, the video clearly indicates that's not how she got there, and she said, Tex, I can't lie about this. Right. So you've got cleaning in the bathroom and then trying to get this witness to say she just appeared as a supportive friend. Look, are we watching the potential for a defendant covering his tracks?
Yes, potentially. Look, there's a reason why Danny Jo Carter was the most anticipated witness in this entire trial. It's because she's the only eyewitness to the event, whether it was a murder or a tragic accident. She was there. She was in the car. But in a lot of ways, her testimony fell flat because she couldn't give any incriminating evidence one way or the other. She doesn't know really. Look, it's pretty clear that she has some distaste. She does not like Tex at this point. She's turned on him. But she couldn't say one way or the other. She didn't see this happen. We know.
Yeah, the gun was wrapped up in his shopping bag. She couldn't tell whether it was cocked or uncocked. She couldn't tell, you know, she didn't even clearly know whether he was falling asleep
or
as he
claimed.
So she's paying attention to driving. That's what she should have been doing.
Of course. And there's this issue of whether or not they were in this, you know, very scary part of town, whether or not they were actually stopped at the red light, whether or not they hit a bump. I mean, these are all things that, look, you don't necessarily pay exact attention to what goes on in a long car trip. You know, I mean, people tend to say, well, why don't you know exactly what transpired? But the fact is, you know, it was late at night, and you know, whether or not he was drifting asleep or not, I mean, she's not going to have an absolute memory of what occurred. So, you know, it wasn't the testimony that I think we were all looking forward to.
Yeah, I want to continue reviewing some of the testimony here because the eventual story that came out, which the facts seem to align the most with, is the story that was heard by this next nurse, Blair Brown.
So at that time, I was, like I said, part of a trauma of any kind, and it wasn't evident, was finding the wound, locating where she had been hit by a bullet. So you're taking off all her personal items, you're taking off her clothes. I was taking off her a ring on her left hand, as well as earrings.
Okay. And what did you do with that jewelry?
Sure. We have small little red bags that we send labs in. I put them in the bags so they wouldn't be separated from each other. And I walked out of room 2 to give it to her husband.
Okay. And as you walk out of critical room 2 and you meet with her husband, did you have a conversation?
I did. At that point, we still hadn't located the gunshot wound. It wasn't evident, like I said. So I started questioning him. I leaned in kind of a comforting manner and said, what happened? What's going on? And he said to me, it was an accident. I had the gun in the back seat and it just went off and it was an accident.
So let's break that down. So you asked him what's going on. Mm-hmm. And does he answer you immediately?
No, it's a delayed response.
Okay. And when he finally responds, what's the first thing he says?
He says it was an accident.
All right. And then after he says it was an accident, what's the next thing?
He said the gun was in my hand.
And after he says the gun was in my hand, what's the next thing he says?
It just went off.
Did he tell you that he pulled the trigger?
He did not use that exact terminology, no.
And after he said the gun went off, did you ask him any more questions?
I did. I was a bit perplexed by that, realizing that He had just told me he had shot my patient. And I said, well, what kind of gun did you use? He was delayed in response, didn't say much, just kind of staring at me. And I started naming guns.
Okay.
I said, yeah.
What kind of guns did you name or ask him about?
Yeah, I said, was it a 22? Was it a 38? Was it a shotgun? And he just responded back to me, 38.
And are you familiar with guns?
I'm not an expert, but I know a little bit about guns.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you know a little bit about guns?
I grew up in the South.
That's a good answer.
Yeah. Well, also being part of your trauma training, you learn that different kind of guns have different sized bullets. There's exploding bullets. There's non-exploding bullets.
And is that why or was that part of the reason you were asking the defendant about what type of guns you could determine what kind of bullet
Yeah.
to hit the patient?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I wanted to be able to go back in the room and give an update to the doctor.
And when he was telling you in that conversation that it was an accident, like the gun was in my hand and it just went off, did he tell you that the car hit a bump?
I don't recall.
Did he mention anything about homeless people or Black Lives Matter protest?
No, not that I remember.
Okay. And when you're having this conversation with Mr. McIver, the defendant, how close are you?
So when I originally came out of the room, I'm looking at a man who's obviously, seen his wife shot, injured. So I'm kind of in that, nurse consoling mode. So I am one hand on the shoulder, leaning in very close to his face, like Tokyo train close to somebody.
There's a lot of us who haven't been to Tokyo and been on a train there.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna approach you and you let me know when to stop.
Yeah.
No, we're not real close. Are we this close?
I'm about this close.
Okay. And how long do you sit here and have a conversation with him like this?
Maybe 10, 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
Why are you? I know you say you're in consoling mode. Why are you that close? Are there reasons for that?
I wanted him to feel like I was concerned about him, concerned about his wife, involved in the matter, and also, you have to be quiet. You have to quietly talk to someone. There's HIPAA violations. If someone were to overhear medical information, that would be wrong.
And when you're this close to him, is there anything that you remember about his appearance or anything that sticks out in your mind as you're having this conversation with him?
Sure. So he was red-faced,
Okay.
and I didn't know if that was a sunburn or just his complexion or what.
Okay, so Tex McIver told that nurse that the gun went off in the car. The other nurse who testified a little while ago in our review said that she thought that she heard him say that the gun went off in the bathroom. This next nurse said that she heard him pressuring witnesses.
Conversation.
Yes.
And can you tell the jurors in passing, did you hear anyone else in the group respond to that statement?
No.
Okay. Did you linger such that you could hear?
No, I asked Alicia Redding to position herself that she could further evaluate if
Wow.
I had heard correctly.
Okay. And do you know whether or not she actually did that?
I believe that she did.
And can you tell the jurors, don't tell me anything Alicia might have said or anything like that, but later on in the evening, did you say anything to her about contacting the police?
No objection, Your Honor. Relevance, attempting to get it hearsay. So,
Asking her what she did?
no, I understand. I'll allow that question.
Did you tell Alicia to contact the police?
I told her that she needed to speak with the police if, in fact, she heard anything.
Okay. And speaking about the police, can you explain to the jurors, you mentioned the word protocol about the police. What does that mean, protocol?
It's a law that any gunshot wound needs to be reported to the police.
Okay. And so you don't know who at the hospital actually would have contacted the police.
Correct.
But you just know that it's just part of the protocol at the hospital that the police would have been contacted if a gunshot victim comes in.
Correct.
Okay. Are there other kind of cases where the police would be contacted as a matter of protocol?
Stabbings are also reportable by law.
How about injuries to children?
Yes, I'm sorry. Injuries to children, elder abuse.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Sanders, anything? Okay. Ms. Sullivan, thank you for your time.
Okay, Caroline Polisi, let's break this all down. One nurse says that she thought he said that the gun went off in the bathroom. Another said he told me directly it went off in the car. Danny Joe says he asked me to lie. This nurse was pretty clear in perceiving that he was pushing a witness around. At a minimum, this sounds like a pretty easy case for the witness tampering charge.
Yes, I mean, we've been focusing here, you and I, on sort of the question of whether or not it was intentional homicide or an accidental.
The big charge.
Right, the
yeah.
big charge. But I think it's pretty clear that the state has a pretty good case for the witness tampering. That's why I love sort of the rundown. When you see throughout the course of the day, it's not so easy to understand exactly what kind of case the prosecution is putting forth. But when you do it like this on Law and Crime, and you get these little nuggets of each witness, boom, you can see it plain as day.
And closing argument is all about summarizing these little nuggets. This one said this, this one said that. What's up with the inconsistent stories? We sort of wrap it all together.
Right.
So we're going to have to keep an eye on this and just see how they thread this all together. When we come back, we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about another case that we've been covering here at the Law and Crime Network. That's the Cherish Periwinkle death in Florida. We're going to talk about a hearing that was held in that case in just a moment. Before we wrap up for the day, we want to talk a little bit about a hearing held today in the Donald Smith case in Florida. He was convicted and sentenced to death after some of the briefest deliberations, perhaps in history, for the death of a young girl named Cherish Periwinkle. The jurors found that he planned out her abduction, raped her, and killed her. Today's hearing was theoretically a chance for the defendant to speak before an official sentencing, but he didn't have much to say. The victim's mother, however, did.
Good morning, Ms. Periwinkle. We're going to place you under oath before you give your statement.
Ma'am, can you please state your name for the record?
Brian Periwinkle.
And if you could try to keep your voice up and speak into the microphone if you can.
Brian Periwinkle.
Prior to coming to court, ma'am, did you prepare a victim impact statement regarding your daughter, Cherish Periwinkle?
Yes.
Would you like to try to read that for us?
Yes. Honorable Judge Cooper, when I lost Cherish, I lost everything. My life was never going to be the same. I feel nauseous every morning. And there's no cure for the emotional pain inside me. The year after she was taken from me, I screamed and cried every day. I missed the simple things like brushing Cherish's hair and snuggling up on the couch and watching movies with her and her sisters, Destiny and Nevaeh.
It's okay. You can make it.
Cherish loved.
Go ahead, you can do this. Take a deep breath. You can do this.
Cherish loved cooking and enjoyed spending time with me in the kitchen, cooking dinner and making Kool-Aid. Cherish would play school with her little sisters. She would be the teacher and they would be the students. She loved reading to Destiny and Nevaeh, and they would color together for hours. The three of them would play in the rain with their umbrellas while I watched from the front porch. We all enjoyed playing hide and seek in the house together as a family. Cherish's birthday is Christmas Eve. That day in the holiday season will never again be a time of joy or celebration. When other people are celebrating Christmas Eve, to them it is Christmas Eve, but in my mind it will always be Cherish's birthday. Cherish used to believe Christmas was a celebration of her birthday, and all the fuss was for her, but Cherish would share her day with her sisters, and they would all get to open one present on Christmas Eve. Since she was taken from me, we have never been able to spend the holidays together as a family, and I never will again. Since June.
That statement continued on, and you can just hear in the tone of that victim's mother's voice the heartache, the anguish of losing a little girl to perhaps the most horrific circumstances that someone can imagine. The defendant, Caroline, really didn't say that much. And at one point during the hearing, he said, well, you know, give me the death penalty, more or less.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's what the jurors did in lightning speed.
They did. You know, of all the cases that we've covered here on Law and Crime, I think this one is the most horrific, and we've seen some pretty bad ones. There's just no words to describe sort of the depravity involved in this crime, and the jury really spoke to that when it came back with a very quick death penalty verdict here for Donald Smith. Just despicable. There's nothing really to say.
Yeah, I mean, so ultimately this case will grind along. Sentencing didn't actually happen today. It will happen at some point in the near future, but we will continue to monitor that as well. Caroline Polisi, it's been far too long. I have not seen you in quite some time here on Law and Crime, but it's great to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to wrap up the broadcast day here on the Law and Crime Network. Of course, we are committed to bringing you live coverage of the best trials we can find coast to coast. And thanks again to those of you watching today on the Crime and Investigation Network. We'll be back here live tomorrow at 9 a.m. Have a good evening, everyone.